everyone, welcome to this acrylic tutorial where we go over how to paint these pumpkins and this truck. This was a very fun piece to create. If you already bought the paint kit, we can just skip right on over to the tutorial itself. If you would like to purchase a paint kit, you can head to the website. The description is down below and you can see if I have any available for pre-order. Let's get started. All right, so to get started with this piece, I am going to paint my background. And I'm going to come in with some black because I want this to be a very moody vibe. I've seen this painting done in different variations where it's very fall-like and all the things, but where I'm at, we're getting close to Halloween, so I want to create a nice Halloween vibe here. So I'm going to be covering the majority of this with some mist, so I'm not going to worry too much about my lines and stuff. And then towards my bottom, I'm going to make it a little bit of gray. So just add a little bit of white. Coming up and around, making it a bit of gray. And I find if you're having a hard time moving your paintbrush, you can just dip it into a little bit of water. It loosens up the pigment and makes it not as thick, so you're able to get some nice smooth lines. So you'll see when I'm out of frame, I don't think you can, yeah, you can kind of see it. I'm just dipping my brush in to water, loosening up that pigment. And I find that my paintbrush can glide a little bit more. I primarily paint with watercolor. I've painted with some acrylic artists before, and they say that this is my watercolor technique coming through, but I still like to keep my paints nice and moist. Trying to be careful here. I'm going to dip my brush and then see how it just spreads. I can get more pigment and it just spreads a little bit better. Okay. I'm going to come up around now with some black. Now you're not going to be able to see the lines of the trees through this color, but just remember kind of the placement of where it is. And at the end, I'll help you figure out where they were. Or what you can do is even just put like a little line with white paint right there. That way we know to come back, and that's the start of your tree. Because the cool thing about acrylic is that you can paint this white and then come in with a different color, and you can just literally paint over top. With watercolor, it's a lot harder to do that, especially with black. If my base is really dark, there's just, unless you get a gouache or a white that's highly pigmented, it's nearly impossible to put a light color over top of it. Okay. And I feel like the background's the part that's the most time consuming. have a little moon there. Just because you're going around the car, you're going to be going around the pumpkins and stuff, so this just takes a little bit of time to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed up my video. So I'm starting to get close to my pumpkin, so I have to switch over now to my round tip brush. And usually it's a good rule of thumb when you're painting large spaces to use a more thicker brush because you can cover a lot more surface, and then use a thinner brush like I'm doing right now to cover the little fine details. Okay, so around my moon, I want to make it super bright and light, so I'm coming in with a little bit of white here, and my background is still wet, and that's fine with me because I'm gonna be making my moon a little bigger, and I'm dragging and pulling in a little bit of the gray, so I'm just adding a little bit of white over top, and I'm not completely filling in the center here. I'm just trying to get a perfect circle. Yes, okay. Perfect. I got a little moon, and I can even add a ton of water onto my white. Here, let me do that real quick. A ton of water. Again, this is my watercolor. And I can create like little moon rays. I'm gonna blend this into the sky a little bit more. Adding a little bit of water and just blending this out into my background. So my background again was still kind of wet, so I was able to have this little subtle shine coming from my moon. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is the truck. All right, so I'm gonna be painting a red truck, but I'm gonna mix it into my black. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown to it, just make this a really, almost like a maroon color. And I'm gonna start on my left side of the painting because every time I paint on the right, I just smudge it. So I'm gonna come over and start painting on this side. Now, if you want to let this rest for a little bit so that your painting is a little drier, you definitely can do that. Or if you have a hair dryer, or I have one of these to make it dry, you can also use one of those as well. That way you're not getting paint all over you. And with acrylic, it really doesn't take long, especially if you've done a thin layer. It doesn't take too long. Okay, I've just done, what are these called? I almost called them wheelbarrows. I know nothing about trucks or car parts. But I feel like the name of what I just painted is like the tip of my tongue, but for whatever reason, it's not gonna happen, not gonna remember. Okay, so now I'm gonna mix up a bit of a darker brown and red into here. And then I'm gonna come in and do this part. Okay, this is not dark enough. So I'm gonna mix a little bit of a darker color. And the reason why I haven't done a very vibrant red here is because it's supposed to look dull. It's the middle of the night. The colors aren't going to be that reflective. This was a bright red car. It might be a little different. Okay, so I'm not seeing too much of a difference here between these colors, so I'm going to have to come in and do a little bit of shadows. I do see the brown, but I think the red's shining through a little bit too much. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come in and add some highlights and shadows, so don't worry if yours looks the same as mine. Okie dokie. I'm just going to come in and fill that right up to the bumper. And then I'm going to add a little bit of red into the black, and right under here, I'm going to fill this part out nice and dark. I'm going to use this dark color to kind of go around here. So I just think if you're using different tones, that way your colors will stand out and the different parts of your truck will stand out as well. Okay, I'm going to come in and use a more lighter red over here. I'm going to paint up here. Okay, I'm coming in, using a little bit of water here. I just added a little bit of orange for the back. Again, just changing up those colors. I love this color. I'm actually really glad that I added some orange to the red. I feel like it's making a really pretty color. Okay. So now what's left is just some of the other colors here that you see. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of a yellow. That yellow just got blended out. I'm going to come in with a little bit of a yellow. You'll see I did not clean my brush before I did this part. I like that it's going to be a bit of a mix of the color. Do some water in here. Okay, I'm going to do the same down here. And then for my wheels, I'm going to come in and paint them a nice grayish color. I'll add some black in there as well. Don't worry, we're going to come back and add a little bit more detail to the truck. I'm just letting my colors kind of settle and dry before I come in and add my shadows and my highlights. So I'm going to get all my first layers down first, and then I can come in and add some more love to my painting. And then right on this edge right here, I'm making it a lot darker than the actual wheel itself. And then around the outside, right in here, I'm going to do a nice black line on this side as well. Do a nice thick black line as well. And I'm gonna let that dry for a bit. Okay, so I'm gonna come in with a little bit of brown, and I'm gonna start kind of, oh no, my painting's still red, so I'm not gonna do that right now. But what I am gonna come in and do is add a little bit of a reflection. So I'm gonna add a little bit of blue to my plate. I'm gonna add a bit of gray to the blue to kind of dull it out. And I'm gonna come in and add some windows. Even when I'm painting with watercolor, it's one of my favorite things to do is just to put down all of my first layers down, and then it gives me an idea of how much in depth I want to be with my paintings. So instead of just fixating on one area, I'll put all of my layers down first. And then I can come back and just keep adding more details that way. It also just helps me give honestly like an end goal, I want to say. I have a good idea of what it's going to look like when it's finished. I'm also going to use this color, this gray color, to do my little license plate back here. I'm going to write boo. I'm going to write boo on my license plate. Okay, and then again, I'm going to come in with a bit of gray, and then I will do the bumper. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white for a nice highlight here on my bumper to make it look as though it's shining. Okay. I actually have to add a highlight right here to separate it from the road. Add a little bit of yellow to separate it. Okay. And then with this gray, I can come in. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. I actually like that. Ugh. I'll do my bumper. No, my rim, sorry. So I added a little bit of a yellow gray. Let that dry. And then I can come in and add the center. And then I can come in with a little bit of white, just add a bit of a shine here to the middle part. Yeah, looks good. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to the brown and I'm gonna start kind of just shadowing a little bit. So I'm gonna shadow around the bumper right in here because I want it to be different and darker so that it stands out. And I'm saying bumper. I honestly don't know what part. The wheelbarrow? Barrow? Someone correct me so I know what this is called. It's gonna bother me. So I'm gonna make this darker with a bit of brown. I'm gonna grab that color of red that I was using and blend it in. And then what I have to do is for the bumper, I have to add a bit of a highlight. So I'm going to come in and actually just use a bit of yellow here. I'm going to come in with that red and just blend out different tones just to kind of make it stand out. I can even add a little bit of white and mix these colors. But this area should be darker, or sorry, lighter. And then again with this white, just blending it in with the red. And I might even, yeah, I'm gonna come in again almost with the black. The brown isn't really standing out that much. So I'm gonna come in with the black and just add a shadow that way. There we go. Now the bumper stands out. Feels a little silly because the rest of it isn't detailed, so let's fix that. Let's come in now with some yellow, with a bit of red. I'm going to come in with that brown black color here and just shadow around so that it stands out. I'm going to use the same color to come in and shadow over here. I'm going to shadow around my doors. I'm going to shadow the inside of this window right here. I'm going to outline this window. So you see how it's starting to kind of come together as you start to put these final details on it. I'm going to add a little line right here. I'm going to add some white into my gray for a handle. I'm going to add a bit of gray under here. And then add some shadow right in here. It's basically at this point just kind of outlining certain elements of the truck. Just to make it stand out. Okay, let me see where else. Right in here, I'm going to shadow. I can even add a little bit of a design to the back if I want. And then I'm going to add a bit of a highlight right in here towards the curve, just to give the curve a little bit of life. Bring in a little bit of white. And then I'm going to bring this color down. And have a little bit of a highlight right here. I'm going to add a bit of darkness right in this part in here so that it looks like it's a bit curved. Okay. You can keep going and adding more details to it, or you can stop. I'm pretty happy with where mine's at. I'm going to come and just add a little bit of depth right in here to my rim. Yeah, let's do the pumpkins and see how we feel. All right, so I'm just going to come in and basically fill out all of my pumpkins. Just going to paint them all orange. Paint over everything, and then I'll come in and just shadow and highlight certain areas. When I paint with watercolor, I like to paint each individual groove, and I actually painted a pretty similar painting, but it was the back view of a truck, and I painted so many pumpkins, you guys, so many pumpkins, and it took me forever to do it. But I love with acrylic, I don't have to do that. I can create shadows and highlights when I have this base color down. Okay. I'm going to add a dark shadow in here to the background of my truck. All right, we're on the home stretch here. I do want to add a little bit more darkness over here. Just fill out this part. I painted it a little bit like a lone pumpkin. All right, now that we have all of this going, we're gonna have some fun with this. I do feel like, sorry, this little part is driving me nuts. The color isn't matching the rest of it. I'm gonna come in and create some shadows with my orange. I'm gonna mix a little bit of brown into my orange, and then I can come in towards my bottom and around this little pumpkin towards my top. I can even add a little bit of red, mix that in. I'm gonna come in with some more orange right in here. And blend it out. Okay, and then I can even bring in a little bit of yellow on each of the grooves for a nice highlight. I'm even going to come in and shadow each of these grooves. Add a little bit of brown and red. And shadow these groove areas. I want to come in and shadow this groove area. And then shadow the bottom part a little bit. And then I'm going to make this area a little bit darker. That way it stands out, that it's further away and tucked behind. And I'm just doing this with all of my pumpkins. I'm just adding little bits of shadows with darker colors, and mixture of orange and reds and browns. And then mixing in some orange into it as well so that it just blends out really nicely. And then I'll come in when everything is blended and I'll make my grooves. Making sure I'm adding some nice highlights. Even add a little bit of white. Okay, I'm gonna come in and just make this one a little bit darker, just casting a little bit of a shadow. And this one as well. And then I gotta add a little bit of a shadow back here. I'm just gonna paint over the stems again. And I'm gonna grab some orange and help blend out this red that I just painted. I'm gonna grab a little bit more orange here. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of a highlight. Adding some orange to just blend out this nice highlight that I got going on here. All right, so let's do the stems now. That way everything kind of comes together. I'm gonna grab some brown and I'm gonna paint some stems. And I think that's all the white. Yeah, okay, cool. So now I can come in and I can do my groove. So I'm gonna mix up a nice brown color and I can just make this groove area stand out a little bit more. Try to make this pumpkin stand out a little bit more. So I'm just adding a little bit more orange over here on this pumpkin. To make it stand out. Okay. Let me see. Oh, I gotta do this side right here. And just groove it. I do need to add a little bit of a shadow right under here though. And I'm just adding a little bit more white for my highlight. Make these pumpkins stand out. All right, and that's pretty fun. So the next thing that we can do is add our trees. So I'm gonna come in and add some black to my brown. And I'm just gonna add some trees. So my video got cut where I did my trees, but I basically just got a brown, mixed it in with my black, and then I just put on some fine pressure, and then I just made some tree shapes. And then I used the very tip of my brush to create branch looks. And then I did it over here, but I added a little bit of gray onto my branch so that it looks like the moon is hitting the branch, and then underneath here just mix a little bit of a darker gray just to have a little bit of a shadow underneath the truck. And that's basically it. I apologize for that. I did want to show you guys a really fun trick. So I want you to grab a fresh napkin and we're going to dip it in some water. And then we're going to dip it in some white, and I don't want this to be a cluggy white, so I'm just going to wipe off any excess on a different part. And basically using it as a sponge. So I'm going to come in and create almost like a, what am I trying to say? Almost like a mist. wet your napkin, dip it into the white, try to get away as much excess as you can. And then we can enjoy a nice misty evening. So yeah, you can do as much mist as you like. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't want to do too much and take away from the painting itself. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I'd love to paint with you again, and happy painting!